Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. So this is going to be a Casper video. It's about time I make a Casper video. I've actually been holding off on making one because I wanted the chart to play out, to reveal its hand, if you will. So I believe at this point, there's a good argument that Casper has done that. It's revealed its hand. So if you recall from my last Casper video, for those of you who follow this channel, in that video, I threw out a possibility that we potentially are not in the first bull run structure, rather we are in the bounce that comes before the bull run structure. And if we are, we should be mentally prepared for a bounce that would test the low on the chart that took place on July the 5th, 2024. Here is a clip from that video. So if this is what is going on, there is a good chance that this could be the low, but I wouldn't count on that. That could easily be challenged if we do something similar to this. This could end up being a new low as opposed to this being the low. So just be prepared for something like that, a bounce that brings it to another low lower than this low. Once again, it doesn't have to be like that, but it is certainly something you want to kind of mentally prepare yourself for. Well, lo and behold, this has taken place. It has now tested the low and even gone below it. So this reaffirms what I have been thinking could be a possibility. So for those of you who are wondering what I'm talking about, for those of you who are new and are not familiar with my TA on Casper, let me jump back to the very beginning. So it is my belief that Casper has a repetitive macro structure. If you have never seen this chart, this is actually pre-mainstream large trading. So if you, for instance, use TradingView, you will not see this part of the chart. TradingView starts with this decline. However, there is history before this decline over here. It is this part of the chart that is actually worth studying, and it is because it is here that we see this repetitive macro structure repeat 2 times. So for those of you who are new, Casper starts with a move up, which is actually a bull run structure. It takes place over here and over here. This structure is the same as these 2 other ones. It just played out on a very large scale. And this is something important. Casper does this. It produces massive fractals and then small fractals. It has no respect for ratios of, okay, this fractal played out this big, so the next one should be so big compared to this fractal. But anyways, Casper starts with a move up, which is actually a bull run structure. It has this topping structure. It then declines, comes to a low. It then enters into a new phase. This is the range-bound phase. I divide this into 3 separate fractals. It then repeats all over again. We have the move up, which is a bull run structure. We have this topping structure, the decline. And this brings up an important point. So now that it's repeating, we can see differences. So the timing, the height, and the depth play out differently when the structures repeat. And this is important because every single time a fractal repeats, it repeats the basic idea. For instance, right here, this topping structure, it kind of does a wave here after pulling back from the peak. It does that here too, and then it breaks to the downside. It breaks to the downside. If we zoom in, there's a little bounce. Let me zoom in real quick. It has this little bounce that denotes the bottoming out of the decline. We see that over here with this decline. However, it was much larger over here. So that underscores the concept of the timing, height, and depth being different, even though they do the same thing. They both did a bounce. This one was much larger than what this one was. So after the decline, Casper moves up into the sideways range-bound time. Price moves up. It comes to a peak. It then pulls back, moves back up again, and kind of winds its way down to a point. We see that over here. It moves up. This is just a small little wick of a candle, the move up. It pulls back. It moves back up again. This one kind of goes sideways before moving back up again, whereas this one over here sort of angled down before moving up. This next structure is unique. It moves up, drops, kind of goes flat and sideways before moving back up again, and in the process creates like a bowl. We see that play out here a bit larger. So price, after it comes to a point, it moves up, it declines, goes sideways, moves back up, and then in the process creates that bowl. You know, this sideways thing, there's actually more to it than just moving sideways. It's actually waves, and as it plays out on today's chart, well, it's not today's, it's in the past a while ago, but it was much larger. After this bowl, it winds its way down to a point, just like it does here. So this one kind of goes sideways and then drops, whereas this one just kind of winds its way downward. So they both come to a point, and then this is the final structure in the sideways range-bound time, and that's a bounce. So the bounce right here. So now that is what I was referring to, that we have been in a bounce. After this bounce comes the first bull run structure. I had believed that we were in this first bull run structure. I thought this bounce played out on a smaller scale. However, with this drop that we experienced on today's chart, it resembles this quite a bit. I'll compare it in a little bit. So this first bull run structure, when it started playing out, it was my belief we were potentially following this. Let me zoom into this. So this is what kicks off the bull run. It's the first structure, and this structure is not as impressive as the latter bull run structures, but nonetheless, it's the beginning of the bull run. So price moves up, and there's order to this. This is the first wave. It moves up, does a second wave right here, moves up to a peak, the third wave, and this one it crashes down into wave 1 zone. All of this played out on today's chart. So it was like, yeah, it's following it. However, as it continued to develop, we have this little bounce on today's chart. It was much larger, and then this is where it really deviated, started going really low, and that was the clue to me. Anyways, so that's the first bull run structure that I thought we have been following for the past, well, since October. So that was over here. This time around, it played out a little different, still the basic idea. So you have your first wave, your second wave, and your third wave. However, on this one, that third wave didn't come crashing down into wave 1 zone. It then moves up into the next structures of the greater bull run structure. So let's talk about this bounce and why I believe it is this that we are following. Remember, Casper has a repetitive macro structure. So after this decline, so this is the bull run. I don't want to get into this part because I want to keep the video short, but suffice it to say, this is the peak of the bull run, which in this case went to like $40. It then crashed, did that topping structure after it pulled us back from the peak way down here, whereas normally it pulls back from the peak and it does it higher up. It then goes into the decline, the bottoming out. All of this over here begins to play out on a larger time frame for the most part. Let's jump over to today's chart. You can go back to some of my other videos where I discussed this part of the structure. I just want to get you familiar with what the cyclical pattern is in this repetitive macro structure. Okay, so here is that bounce that I believe we are currently following. That is this bounce right here. I previously thought that this was the bounce, and then this first part right here was the first wave. This was the second wave of the first bull run structure. This was the peak. It came crashing down into wave 1 zone. And then we just had some really large iteration of this small bounce right here. I was like, well, maybe that's possible. But then it just kept declining and declining. And then it started to resemble the decline of this bounce right here. And that's where I started to think, okay, the bounce doesn't normally have these large peaks, but it could theoretically play out like that. It's going to play out unique every single time. And now with this decline, we have this part right here where it kind of angles down and then comes to a point before dropping, and this drop is even, the timing of this is a little different. You have this sharp part right here, but then it kind of has this little flared out part right here. It has this move up, this decline. So you can see that it's not an overnight thing that one day I realized, hey, bam, we're doing this instead. It's been a slow process. I've wanted to kind of get confirmation that my thinking had some validation. Well, I believe, folks, with what is playing out on today's chart, that we are most likely doing the bounce before the first bull run structure. If something gets printed on this chart that makes me doubt that, I'll let you know, but really, we're at the end of it. We're literally at the very end of this. I don't know how low it's going to drop. It could drop a little lower. It's going to bottom out. It may do a bottoming out structure on a small time frame. I don't know timing. So it needs to complete the decline, and there's usually standard kind of bottoming out patterns that take place, and then it begins to move up. So what I am looking for from here on out is a bottoming out. I don't know where it will bottom out. It could be here, it could be lower, but eventually this is what I believe is coming next. Something similar to this. Now, the timing, the height, and the depth could play out differently than what this massive bull run was. It could also follow this one right here, which was my belief that we were following until it began to deviate. What gets me excited about this bounce before the bull run is we're following this one. And before this structure, we were following this structure. I'm not here to say that we're going to see something like this, but this bull run, it's massive. I'm not predicting that it's going to go to $40. That's the wrong takeaway if you walk away from this video thinking that. What I'm saying is that following this more recent iteration versus this one, I believe it has potential to do well. Put it that way. Well, folks, that wraps it up. I know there's a lot of doom and gloom out there right now with all the hack or whatever happened to Casper, the security breach. You know, it's kind of interesting when you step back and look at it. So this macro structure tells us that this structure is going to play out, and this bounce historically has gone quite low. But it's interesting to see the narrative that surrounds the structure when it begins to develop. So we have this terrible news of a security breach, and it's just horrible. But in so doing, it's just really fulfilling what the macro structure says is likely to take place. We see that bounce taking place. It dropped low. Everything that it is doing is in line with what the macro structure tells us. Now, I've had to do some course corrections along the way, as I thought that we were in the first bull run structure, but as it continues to play out, I will adjust and eat humble pie and be happy to align myself with the chart. I don't want to put my agenda over what the chart is telling me. I shut up, I listen to what the chart says, and I let you guys know. So the less you see of me and my agenda, my will, my desires, the better. I want to reflect what the chart is saying, and that's important because that is the way to prosper. But once this bounce completes, the bad news fades away, we will enter into the first bull run structure, folks. I can't underscore this enough. We have exciting days ahead. This is the darkest hour before the sun begins to rise. We have a beautiful day ahead of us. So make it through this night, because tomorrow comes a new day, and with that new day, new possibilities. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. But if you did enjoy this video and you would like to see more of this and you're not yet a subscriber, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. And if you felt this video was helpful, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day. and bye for now.